If you went to school in 1970s Britain, the day didn't end when the bell rang. It released you into a world that feels almost impossible now, a world without smartphones, without live location, without group chats, and without parents checking in every 10 minutes. After school wasn't scheduled. It was a whole second life. A few hours where the street became your playground, the corner shop became your reward system, and home had its own rules waiting for you the moment you walked through the door. So here are 15 things almost every British kid did after school in the 1970s. The routines, the habits, and the little rituals that feel like a time machine if you remember them. And as we go, remember, not every kid did every single one, and life depended on town, money, and family. But these are the patterns that show up again and again across the UK whenever people talk about growing up in that decade. 1. Dropping your bag. Anywhere. The first move was always the same. You came in and dumped your school bag on the floor like it weighed a ton. Hallway, kitchen, stairs, doesn't matter. And if your mum cared about tidiness, you'd hear it instantly. But that bag drop was a signal. School is over. 2. Getting told to change out of your uniform wasn't just clothing. It was a rule. So a lot of kids got the same instruction the moment they walked in. Get changed. Don't ruin that. Because clothes cost money and uniforms had to survive the week. So you swapped into play clothes and suddenly you were back to being yourself. 3. Tea or something to eat before going back out. Most kids didn't come home and cook themselves a meal. They came home to a quick after-school snack. Toast, biscuits, a sandwich. Maybe beans if you were hungry. Sometimes leftovers if there were any. And almost always a drink. Often tea, even for adults. And sometimes for kids too, depending on the household. Not because it was trendy, because it was comfort. 4. Being sent to the shops with a note and coins. This is one of the most 1970s Britain memories of all. You didn't order online. You got handed coins, real coins, and maybe a scrap of paper with a list. Bread, milk, fags for Dad, something small. And you walked to the corner shop like it was normal, because it was. Kids ran errands constantly. It taught responsibility early. It also made you feel grown up. 5. Knocking on a mate's door and asking, "Can he come out?" No texting. No, "Where are you?" You just went. You knocked. A parent answered. You asked if your friend could come out, and if they couldn't, you moved on to the next door like it was a mission. And the street slowly filled with kids, one by one, like it was assembling itself. 6. Playing football in the street. In the 1970s, the street was a sports ground. Jumpers for goalposts, a battered ball, arguments about whether it hit the wall or went in. And yes, cars existed. But in many neighbourhoods, there were fewer cars than today, and when a car came, everyone shouted, "Car!" The game stopped, the ball got dragged to the side, and 2 seconds later it continued like nothing happened. 7. Riding bikes everywhere with no helmet and no drama. A bike wasn't just transport, it was freedom. You rode to friends, to the park, to the shops, to nowhere. And you learned your town by moving through it. No trackers, no calls, no constant parental updates. You just came home when the time felt right, or when someone shouted your name down the street. 8. Making up games out of absolutely nothing. Kids in the 70s didn't need equipment for everything. They needed space and imagination. Kirby at the curb, chase games, hide and seek, tag, skipping rope, marbles, playing war with sticks that became rifles in your mind. It wasn't screen time, it was outdoor invention. 9. Getting covered in mud and then hearing about it. British weather does what it wants, and kids didn't stop for drizzle. So after school often meant muddy knees, wet socks, and shoes that looked like they'd been through a battlefield. And then you'd walk in and hear the classic line, "Look at the state of you," because Mum had just cleaned the floor. 10. Listening to the radio, not as background, but as culture. Music in the 1970s wasn't endless streaming. It was radio, records, and waiting. You'd hear songs through a kitchen radio or a bedroom radio, and they felt bigger because you didn't have instant replay. You'd talk about what was on. You'd sing along. You'd try to catch the song again later. And if you were older, pop culture became part of your identity fast. 11. Watching kids' TV if the timing worked. TV wasn't on demand, so after school had a rhythm, finish your stuff, grab a snack, and catch children's programs at the right time. If you missed it, you missed it, which meant kids talked about the same shows the next day because everyone was on the same schedule. 12. Doing homework, late, fast, or not at all. Let's be honest. Some kids did homework right away. Many did it right before bed. Some forgot until the morning, but homework in the 70s often had a different feel. Fewer online portals, fewer constant school messages. You had a book, you had an exercise pad, you wrote things by hand, and if you lost the homework, it stayed lost. 13. Helping at home without calling it chores. After school wasn't only play. A lot of kids helped, setting the table, washing up, peeling potatoes, watching younger siblings, taking out the bins, going to fetch coal if the house still used solid fuel. It wasn't family bonding. It was just what you did, and it made kids feel like part of the household machine. 14. The bath routine and the rush to get it done. In many homes, baths were scheduled, especially if there was one bathroom and a whole family. So after school might include, "Right, your bath tonight." And you knew the order. You knew the timing, and you knew you had to move fast because the room was cold and the next person was waiting. 15. Coming home when the streetlights came on. This is the big one, the unofficial curfew. In many areas, children were expected home at a certain time, and often it was linked to daylight or streetlights. When it got dark, you went in. Sometimes you heard your name shouted down the street. Sometimes you heard a whistle. Sometimes you just knew you were pushing it. And when you finally came home, you had that very specific feeling, cold hands, warm house smell, and the day shifting into evening. And here's what all of that really means. After school in 1970s, Britain wasn't only fun. It was a training ground. It taught independence because adults weren't hovering. It taught social skills because you had to deal with people face to face. It taught responsibility because errands and helping at home were normal. And it taught resilience because British weather and British houses didn't always make life comfortable. It wasn't perfect. Not every childhood was safe. Not every home was warm. Not every street was friendly. But for millions of people, those hours after school created the strongest memories of all, because they weren't controlled by institutions. They were controlled by kids. And if you grew up in that era, you can probably still feel it. The weight of the school bag hitting the floor, the dash back outside, the sound of a football bouncing off a wall, the smell of toast or tea in the kitchen, and that moment when the streetlights came on and you knew today is over.